I thought I would have a serious discussion when it comes to my party, the Liberal Democrats, on its position on immigration.
What have I done?
Because no matter what your views are when it comes to immigration, whether you support immigration, don't support immigration, downright don't like immigrants, sorry if you're in that camp.
No, you're not. Yeah, no, you're not.
Open borders, see it as eroding British culture like a nativist, again, sorry if you belong to that.
No, God! No, God, please, no! No!
See it as a debate on numbers and resources, or see immigrants as a net benefit. Immigration is already a hot topic in British politics. There's no avoiding it. But if we Lib Dems are being honest with ourselves, our position on immigration feels uncertain, too timid, a bit wet. You mention immigration in Lib Dem circles like the membership, and people will say, we're a pro-immigration party. We believe in compassion and fairness. But mention it on the doorstep, and suddenly things get very vague. We oddly seem hesitant, like we're trying not to spook the horses. So I'm going to share my thoughts on this. But first, if you enjoyed this content, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to stay notified. So, my criticism, which I'm not alone, is that while the heart of the position is clear internally, the message we send out to the public is often muddled and we often go shy about it. We champion immigration as a positive force, but on the other hand, we're hesitant to assert this boldly, often defaulting to vague language like balance and control that fails to inspire public confidence or imagination. This lack of clarity weakens our voice in the debate, dominated by extreme narratives, risking us being seen as too timid. Plus, while we talk a lot about care, and I appreciate Ed Davey for raising how restricting visas for care workers can make it difficult, I don't feel like our party doubles down on it enough and talk more generally about the positives of immigration. The mixed tone between the slightly more enthusiastic voices like Ed Davey and the cautious and sometimes defensive language from others can sometimes illustrate a lack of unified, bold messaging, or at least lack of punch and power to get behind it. Plus, I do feel like it has dropped off Lib Dem national conversation on our position at times, especially as parties are tagging reform policies. I'm going to share a few clips to help articulate my point. First, here's Ed Davey supporting migration in the care sector, particularly unskilled care workers, rightly pointing out they're essential for our contribution.
Large numbers of care workers from overseas. Now, those carers looking after our loved ones in care homes should be thanked, not demonised.
But then here's Ed again, where he talks about immigration levels being too high.
High levels of net migration. I'm keen to talk about legal migration in particular, because it feels that that is the main driver of the rise. Do you think that legal migration is too high?
Yes, I do. And you're right to say that since we left the EU, immigration has more than doubled, completely against what the Conservatives and the Brexiteers promised.
So you almost got two different tones of positions that form between our party. I mean, I'm all for political triangulation and synthesis, but when it comes to immigration, this mixed messaging risks making us look uncertain, and it can often frustrate the public and come across as dishonest or at least a bit frit or wimpy. Now, it must be said when it comes to my own views on immigration that I am a very pro-immigration person. But I come from a viewpoint not just that immigration helps with the diversity and enriches our nation both culturally and socially, but also see it as enriching our economy. And while I do agree that immigration should be viewed from a moral point of view and should co-op with our liberal values, I also think we need to make the economic arguments for it.
Stay focused. Talk about things that amount to people. You know? It's the economy, stupid.
It's the economic arguments that I find more interesting, because I think there's a connection between people's standard of living and the health of the economy and people's anxiety about immigration.
Yeah, well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man.
Why no, Miss Lebowski, it isn't just my opinion. I can actually back this up. For example, the Spanish economy at the moment is one of the leading European countries who have taken a complete opposite approach to immigration, and this policy has really helped boosted their economy. A quick turnaround from a country where they had a debt crisis from the financial crash, unemployment that tipped 20%, and contractions in GDP. Since 2021, Spain has averaged growth at around 3.5%, something that any British Chancellor would be heads over heel on, and it even had 2-year periods in which that growth exceeded 5.5%. The intake of immigrants has not seen a rise in unemployment. In fact, as I said, there was a point where unemployment was 20%, but with the immigration intake, it has continued to fall and is now 10%. Still high, yes, but the main thing is it's continued to fall. What's driving this? Part of the answer is immigration. Spain has embraced immigration as a tool for economic growth. It has regularised hundreds of thousands of undocumented migrants, opened legal pathways for non-EU workers, and welcomed labour from Latin America, Africa and Eastern Europe. In 2027 alone, over 700,000 migrants arrived in Spain, a record high, and the economy has absorbed that with little friction. What's more, these migrants have been a net positive. 82% of new arrivals were of working age, bolstering the labour market in a country with an ageing population. Immigrants now account for over 15% of Spain's workforce, helping to fill in gaps in construction, hospitality, agriculture and healthcare. A 2023 report from the BBVA Research found that immigrant labour was responsible for nearly 1/3 of Spain's post-pandemic economic recovery. 1/3. And crucially, while much of Europe is grappling with a demographic time bomb, Spain's immigration policy has helped stabilise its working age population and social care capacity. In fact, I feel like I need to debunk some British myths when it comes to immigration, as study after study shows that immigration has had a net positive. A major report from UCL found that European immigrants in the UK contributed over £20 billion more in taxes than they took out in public services or benefits. Non-EU migrants have also contributed positively overall. And let's not forget, immigrants actually have fewer rights to claim benefits. They have to pay the same taxes and are often subject to extra charges, like the NHS Immigration Health Surcharge, which costs £1,000 per person just to access healthcare that most Brits get for free. They work, they pay, they contribute. The narrative that they're draining the system, it's not only wrong, it's just a distraction from the real economic issues. And if I could bring back the connection when it comes to British people's standard of living and the economic health in people's wallets, I do think that a lot of this immigration debate is misplaced. People are frustrated for the lack of economic growth in this country. Better standard of living with real wages having fallen or remained stagnant. And it is easy to blame immigration. For me, the argument we should be making is that immigration will help drive our economy forward by filling in crucial labour shortages, supporting key industries and contributing to innovation and entrepreneurship. When the economy grows and people's incomes rise, many of the anxieties around immigration should naturally ease. So rather than framing immigration as a problem, we should be clear that it is part of the solution to economic challenges holding back Britain. That is not to ignore or downplay some of the nativist, nationalist or even downright racist rhetoric that has been coming out of this debate. I certainly have noticed a change in the mood when it comes to talking about immigration now compared to just a few years ago when conversations were last had on this. But I think a lot of this is boiled down to bad actors and agents who are using the depressed economy to find someone to blame and exploit a situation for political gain. And people who don't feel the rewards from a stagnant economy due to the Tories' complete botch up on the economic and social policies, then perhaps understandably people will turn to that. I think the economic situation often impacts other environmental situations. The argument being here, the better the people's lives are, the less immigration might fall in national conversation. There is a reason why some wealthy Tories in the Shires often have a relaxed view on immigration, because they are largely sheltered from the impacts of a bad economy. Do I want systems in place? Of course. We need to have systems in place, and I don't support open borders. However, coming back to the Lib Dems, I do find that our position is rather muddled, and we sometimes are a bit frit when it comes to talking openly and positively about the benefits of immigration and how we should be pushing this narrative from an economic argument. We seem to want to talk amongst ourselves as a party as being a pro-immigration party, but when we approach the public, we just seem to get a bit shy about it. I do think the heart is there, but we aren't bold enough about it. I think we should be shouting loudly from both an economic perspective, but also from a philosophically liberal perspective, about how Labour's plans to have the state to control the flow of immigration and have some kind of Soviet-style quotas when it comes to accepting work visas, when we have many areas in the economy that have labour shortages. The recent announcement to restrict people to come as social care workers because they are seen as unskilled being a prime example. Which, by the way, as my dad did once work as a carer, I take big offence on that. But the care sector is crying out for workers. So you can see how if we are just less timid, we can make both the economic persuasion, but also a philosophical persuasion. But back on controls. Yes, we do need controls, and I'm not for open borders. But I think we need to be honest with the public when it comes to the economic challenges and the arguments and tie that in with our own liberal philosophy. There are many things you could look at, such as removing students from the immigration data, allowing high-skilled students or graduates to have work visas, golden visas for certain jobs or from certain countries where there's a shortage, such as construction, which is impacting the country's ability to build new housing and infrastructure, or even relaxing the authority of the Home Office to set immigration policy, and perhaps even having the freedom of movement from the EU or Commonwealth countries, starting with our Anglophile countries such as Canada, Australia and New Zealand. There are many options. Now, when it comes to refugees, that's a whole different discussion in itself. But let me say this. The UK has a moral duty under international law and under basic human decency to provide safe refuge. The Lib Dems should again stand on those principles, as well as practical policies such as refugee quotas in agreements with neighbouring countries, safe routes, and possibly even having humanitarian visas. But that's all for now. Thanks for listening, and if you enjoyed the content, I know it's going to be a very heated discussion, because it always is, but if you enjoyed the content, then don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Until then, see you next time, and see you soon.